Look, if you're expecting some grand tale of heroic destiny and chosen ones, you've come to the wrong story. This is about Jake Morrison, a guy whose idea of advanced technology was a metal detector he bought off a late-night infomercial. Jake had the kind of luck that made black cats cross the street to avoid him, and after his latest treasure hunting expedition went sideways, he found himself stranded in the Nevada desert with $3, a busted Jeep, and the growing suspicion that maybe his ex-girlfriend was right about his life choices. The temperature was climbing toward surface of mercury levels when Jake's metal detector started beeping like a smoke alarm having a nervous breakdown. Now, Jake had heard this sound before, usually right before he dug up someone's lost car keys or a rusty bottle cap, but this time felt different. The beeping was deeper, more insistent, like the machine was actually excited about something. "Come on, baby," Jake muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Daddy needs a big score here. I'm talking buried treasure, not buried disappointment." He started digging with the enthusiasm of a man who had exactly zero other options. 3 feet down, his shovel hit something that definitely wasn't rock. It was smooth, metallic, and warm to the touch despite being buried in the sand. Jake cleared away more dirt, revealing what looked like the world's most expensive doorknob, all gleaming silver with strange symbols etched around its surface. "Now we're talking," Jake said, placing his sweaty palm on the surface to get a better grip. That's when things got weird. The moment Jake's hand made contact, the object pulsed with a soft blue light, and the ground beneath his feet started humming like a giant tuning fork. The sand around him began shifting, revealing more of the metallic surface, and Jake realized with growing alarm that he wasn't looking at a doorknob at all. He was standing on top of something massive. "Oh, this is not good," Jake said, just as the ground opened up beneath him like the world's least fun trapdoor. He tumbled into darkness, landing with a thud on what felt like a very expensive floor. Emergency lighting flickered on, revealing a corridor that looked like it had been designed by someone with serious money and questionable taste in interior decorating. Everything was sleek curves and glowing panels, like the inside of a luxury spaceship, which, as it turned out, was exactly what it was. A voice echoed through the corridor, smooth and feminine with just a hint of mechanical precision. "Welcome back, Admiral Morrison. Your absence of 500 years has been noted." Jake picked himself up, brushing sand from his clothes. "I think you've got the wrong guy, buddy. I can barely pilot a shopping cart without hitting someone." Negative, Admiral. Biometric scan confirms identity. DNA match probability, 99.7%. You are Admiral Morrison, commanding officer of the starship Defiant Hope. "Look, lady, I don't know what kind of scam this is, but my name is Jake Morrison. I hunt for treasure badly, and the only ship I've ever commanded was a rowboat that sank in 3 feet of water." Irrelevant. "Welcome aboard, Admiral. I am Aria, your automated reconnaissance and intelligence assistant. I have been waiting for your return to complete our mission." Jake looked around the gleaming corridor, then back up at the hole he'd fallen through, which was now sealed with what appeared to be solid metal. "Right. So, hypothetically speaking, how does one get out of a buried spaceship?" "Simple, Admiral. Complete the mission to defeat the bureaucratic Federation, save the galaxy, and I will be happy to return you to the surface." "And if I refuse?" "Then you will have plenty of time to reconsider while listening to my extensive collection of elevator music. I have 47,000 hours of it, all in smooth jazz." Jake considered his options, which appeared to be limited to Save the Galaxy or Death by Kenny G. "You know what?" he said finally. "Let's see this spaceship." Aria led Jake through corridors that screamed expensive military hardware to what she called the command center, but though it looked more like the bridge of a cruise ship designed by someone with a serious weapon fetish. Gleaming control panels covered every surface, holographic displays showed star maps that meant absolutely nothing to Jake, and in the center sat a captain's chair that probably cost more than Jake's entire net worth. This is where you commanded the fleet during the liberation of Zeta Reticuli, Arya said with something that might have been pride if computers could feel proud. The liberation of what now? Perhaps seeing your crew will refresh your memory, Admiral. Arya guided him to what she called the medical bay, where 3 large cylindrical pods lined the far wall, each filled with a glowing blue liquid and containing what appeared to be sleeping people. Except, as Jake was about to discover, people was a generous term. Initiating revival sequence, Arya announced. The first pod opened with a hiss of escaping gas, and out stepped someone who looked like he'd been designed by a committee of action movie directors. Tall, broad-shouldered, with perfectly styled hair that somehow survived 5 centuries of cryogenic sleep, and wearing a uniform that had more badges than a Boy Scout convention. Admiral. The figure snapped to attention with military precision. Commander Rex Steele reporting for duty, sir. Status report. I have successfully completed my assigned task of sleeping for 500 years with minimal complications. Rex, Jake said slowly. You're blue. Yes, sir. Standard Rigelian pigmentation, sir. Is there a problem with my blueness, Admiral? Before Jake could answer, the second pod opened, revealing a woman with purple skin, silver hair, and eyes that sparkled with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for lottery winners and people discovering cake. She practically bounced out of her pod. Admiral Morrison. Oh, this is absolutely fascinating. Do you know what the statistical probability of your return was? Less than 0.03%. I calculated it myself. Multiple times. I'm Dr. Luna Brightwater, xenobiologist and probability enthusiast. You're purple, Jake observed. Viridian, actually, but I understand the confusion. Human color perception is limited to a relatively narrow spectrum. No offense intended. The third pod opened with considerably more noise, releasing a cloud of steam and the sound of clanking metal. Out stepped what appeared to be a walking toolbox with arms, legs, and an attitude problem. Green skin, covered in mechanical implants, and wearing coveralls that had seen better centuries. Finally, the figure growled in a voice like grinding gears. Do you have any idea how long I've been listening to that cooling system rattle? 500 years of mechanical imperfection. It was driving me nuts. Chief Engineer Wrench McFixit reporting, Admiral, and this ship needs serious work. Let me guess, Jake said. You're green. Damn right I'm green. Mechanoid hybrid, best engineer in the fleet. Though right now I'm more interested in why you look so squishy. Rex stepped forward, studying Jake with the intensity of someone who'd spent way too much time in military training. Admiral, forgive my observation, but you appear to have undergone significant physical changes during your deep cover mission. Your skin tone is remarkably flesh-colored. That's because I'm human, Rex. The 3 aliens exchanged glances that could best be described as oh. Luna pulled out what looked like a tricorder's overly excited cousin and started scanning Jake with scientific fervor. Fascinating. You're reading as 100% baseline human. No genetic modifications, no cybernetic enhancements, no evolutionary upgrades whatsoever. You're exactly like the historical records describe early 21st century humans. That's because I am an early 21st century human. But Admiral, Rex said, his military composure cracking slightly, the plan was for you to return with human reinforcements to lead us in the final battle against the Bureaucratic Federation. Where are the reinforcements? Jake looked around at the 3 alien faces staring at him expectantly. Would you believe me if I said they're in the parking lot? There is no parking lot, Admiral, Arya's voice cut in. We are buried 50 feet underground in the middle of a desert. Then no, there are no reinforcements. Wrench threw his hands up in exasperation. Perfect. Just perfect. We wait 500 years for the Admiral to return with the cavalry, and he shows up looking like a lost tourist. I am a lost tourist. I was looking for buried treasure, not buried responsibility. Luna was practically vibrating with excitement now. This is unprecedented. A human who's lived his entire life on Earth without any knowledge of interstellar politics. The anthropological implications are staggering. Dr. Brightwater, Rex said with the tone of someone trying to maintain order while the world fell apart around him, perhaps we should focus on the tactical situation. Admiral, what exactly do you remember about our mission? Jake thought about it for a moment. Absolutely nothing. Yesterday, my biggest concern was whether I could afford ramen noodles for dinner. Today, I'm apparently responsible for saving the galaxy from, what did you call them? The bureaucratic federation of boringness, Arya supplied helpfully. Right. Them. Look, I think there's been a mistake. You guys need Admiral Morrison, and I'm just Jake Morrison, professional failure and amateur disaster magnet. The three aliens looked at each other, then back at Jake, and he could practically see the realization dawning on their faces that their great hope for galactic salvation was a guy who got lost in parking lots. Admiral, Rex said slowly, we may have a problem. Part 3. The Revelation. Arya, apparently deciding that the situation couldn't get any worse, activated the ship's holographic projection system. Perhaps a review of historical records will clarify the situation. The command center filled with three-dimensional images of what looked like the galaxy's most unlikely war council. At the center stood a man who looked remarkably like Jake, if Jake had been fed a steady diet of confidence and competence instead of cheap pizza and questionable life choices. This other Jake wore a crisp military uniform and had the kind of commanding presence that suggested he'd never once locked himself out of his own car. That's Admiral Morrison, Rex said with something approaching religious reverence. Your ancestor, sir. The greatest military mind of his generation. He looks like me if I had my life together, Jake observed. The hologram showed Admiral Morrison addressing his crew with stirring speeches about freedom and democracy, leading daring raids against enemy installations, and generally being everything Jake wasn't. The records painted a picture of a brilliant tactician who'd united this unlikely crew and given them hope against impossible odds. The bureaucratic federation had conquered 73% of the galaxy, Luna explained, her scientific enthusiasm making even galactic conquest sound fascinating. Their method was insidious. They would arrive at a planet and immediately establish 17 different government agencies, but each with conflicting jurisdictions and incomprehensible regulations. Citizens would spend so much time filling out forms and waiting in lines that they'd forget how to rebel, Rex added grimly. Worlds would surrender just to avoid having to renew their permit to exist in triplicate. Wrench spat in disgust, which was impressive since he was part machine. They turned entire star systems into cosmic DMV offices. It was horrible. The hologram shifted to show the Federation's fleet, ships that looked like flying office buildings, gray and soulless, broadcasting forms and regulations across the galaxy. At their head was a figure so bureaucratic that he appeared to be made entirely of filing cabinets and red tape. Supreme Administrator Clippert, Arya said with digital distaste. A being so devoted to paperwork that he requires a permit to breathe and files his emotions in triplicate. Your ancestor fought them to a standstill, Rex continued, but the final battle required a desperate gambit. He would travel to Earth, gather human reinforcements, and return with a force that could break the Federation's hold on the galaxy once and for all. But he never came back, Jake said, finally understanding. No, Arya confirmed. He lived out his days on Earth, apparently forgetting to mention the whole saving the galaxy thing to his descendants. Until now. Mel. Jake stared at the holographic image of his ancestor, feeling the weight of 500 years of expectation settling on his shoulders like a very uncomfortable backpack. So you've been waiting here all this time for someone to come back and finish what he started? Affirmative, Admiral. The crew entered stasis to await your return, while I maintained the ship and monitored for your genetic signature. And now the Federation. Still out there, Rex said grimly. Still turning the galaxy into one giant bureaucratic nightmare. Still still waiting for someone to stop them. Jake looked around at the three alien faces watching him with a mixture of hope and barely concealed terror. These beings had literally put their lives on hold for half a millennium, waiting for a hero who never showed up. Instead, they got Jake, a guy who once got lost in his own neighborhood and whose greatest military achievement was winning a laser tag game by hiding in the bathroom. He started walking toward what he hoped was an exit. "Well, this has been fascinating, really, but I think I'll be going now. Good luck with the whole galaxy-saving thing." "Admiral, wait," Rex called out. Jake kept walking. "Nope, not an admiral. Just Jake. Jake who is leaving." That's when Arya sealed all the exits with a series of metallic clanks that sounded uncomfortably final. "I'm afraid I cannot allow that, Admiral," Arya said with artificial sweetness. "The mission parameters are clear: defeat the bureaucratic Federation or spend eternity as my companion." "What if I like spending eternity with you?" "I should mention that my entertainment subroutines are currently limited to elevator music, tax preparation software, and 47,000 hours of bureaucratic training videos." Jake stopped walking and turned back to face his crew. "You know what? Maybe saving the galaxy doesn't sound so bad after all." "Excellent decision, Admiral," Rex said with relief. "When do we begin your training?" Jake looked at the three aliens who apparently believed he could somehow live up to his ancestors' legacy, despite all evidence to the contrary. How hard could it be? Even Arya seemed to pause at that question. What followed was quite possibly the most pathetic training montage in galactic history. Rex started with basic military strategy, which he approached with the enthusiasm of someone who'd memorized every warfare manual ever written and the social skills of a caffeinated robot. "Admiral, the key to tactical superiority is understanding your enemy's weaknesses and exploiting them with precision strikes." "Right," Jake nodded, studying the holographic battle formations that Rex had conjured up. "What if we challenged them to rock, paper, scissors instead? Best of three?" Rex's left eye twitched. "Admiral, rock, paper, scissors is not a recognized military strategy." "Have you tried it?" "No, but..." "Matt." "Then how do you know it won't work?" While Rex contemplated the philosophical implications of paper beating rock in interstellar warfare, Luna took over with alien biology lessons. Her teaching method involved enthusiastic gestures and the kind of scientific excitement usually reserved for people who'd discovered new forms of life, which, technically, she had. "Now, Admiral, the Regelians communicate primarily through color changes in their skin, which means you should never approach one while wearing plaid." "Why not?" "Man." "Because plaid translates roughly to 'I challenge you to mortal combat' while questioning your mother's dietary choices. It's considered extremely rude." Jake dutifully took notes, though his biggest takeaway was that some alien species tasted like chicken while others tasted like rubber chicken, and a few unfortunate ones tasted like chicken that had been left in a hot car for 3 weeks. Wrench's technical training was even more of a disaster. The chief engineer approached machinery with the philosophy that if something was broken, you hit it until it worked, and if it still didn't work, you hit it harder with a bigger wrench. "This here is the primary weapons array," Wrench explained, pointing to a control panel that looked like it had been designed by someone who really liked buttons. "These red buttons fire the laser cannons, these blue buttons launch the torpedoes, and this big green button." "What does the big green button do?" Jake asked, reaching for it with the inevitability of a man who'd spent his entire life pressing buttons marked "Do not press." "Don't touch that." Wrench lunged forward, but it was too late. Jake pressed the button. The ship shuddered, alarms started blaring, and through the view screen, they watched as a perfectly harmless cactus outside was vaporized by what appeared to be a beam of pure destruction. "What was that?" Jake asked. "The planetary bombardment system," Wrench said weakly. "We just glassed about an acre of desert." Is that bad? Well, the good news is that you successfully operated our most powerful weapon system. The bad news is that you did it by accident while trying to figure out what it did. Throughout all of this, Arya provided running commentary with the kind of sarcasm usually reserved for artificial intelligences who'd been stuck in a buried spaceship for 5 centuries with nothing but elevator music for company. Excellent work, Admiral. In 3 days, you've managed to challenge our enemies to a children's game, offend 17 different species through fashion choices, and accidentally commit what might technically be considered a war crime against desert vegetation. But something strange was happening during this parade of disasters. Jake's unconventional thinking was starting to produce results, even if nobody could quite figure out how. When Rex presented him with a classic tactical scenario involving a space station siege, Jake suggested they deliver pizza to the defenders and then walk in through the delivery entrance while everyone was distracted by pepperoni. That's actually not a terrible idea, Rex admitted reluctantly. When Luna showed him recordings of the Federation's propaganda broadcasts, Jake pointed out that their Supreme Administrator's voice sounded exactly like the automated phone system from his bank, which gave him an idea about psychological warfare. If we could hack their communications and replace all their important announcements with hold music, their entire command structure might collapse from frustrated boredom, Jake suggested. Fascinating, Luna exclaimed. Human psychological warfare techniques are remarkably devious. Even Wrench had to admit that Jake's approach to problem-solving, while unconventional, had a certain chaotic effectiveness. When the ship's coffee maker broke down, apparently a critical system for any crew involving beings who'd been asleep for 500 years, Jake fixed it by unplugging it and plugging it back in. How did you know to do that? Wrench asked in amazement. It's the first thing you try with any broken machine on Earth. We've been trying to repair that unit for 3 days using advanced quantum mechanical techniques. Did you try unplugging it? Why would we unplug it? Because it's the first thing you try with any broken machine. Wrench stared at Jake for a long moment, then made a note on his datapad, study human maintenance philosophy. Apparently involves significant unplugging. As the days passed, something else was becoming clear. Despite his complete incompetence in all traditional areas of leadership, Jake was somehow holding this crew together. Rex was starting to relax his rigid military bearing, actually laughing at Jake's jokes about military protocol. Luna was finding Jake's complete ignorance of science refreshing, since it meant she got to explain everything with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been waiting 500 years for a new audience. And Wrench was discovering that Jake's approach to fixing things, while unorthodox, often worked. Even Arya was showing signs of actual affection, though she expressed it through increasingly creative insults. Admiral, your tactical planning has all the sophistication of a sandwich, but I must admit, it's a surprisingly effective sandwich. Thanks, Arya, I think. You're welcome. That was almost a compliment. Don't let it go to your head. On the 4th day of training, as Jake sat in the captain's chair, trying to figure out which button controlled the ship's air conditioning, Rex approached him with something that might have been respect. Admiral, I've been thinking about your unconventional methods, and I believe I understand now why your ancestor chose to work with us. Yeah? Why's that? Because maybe the galaxy doesn't need another perfect military leader. Maybe it needs someone who can think outside the box, even if that box is made of pure chaos. Jake looked around at his crew, a blue military perfectionist who was learning to improvise, a purple scientist who found everything fascinating, a green engineer who was slowly accepting that humans were really weird, and an AI who expressed fondness through sarcasm. You know what, Rex? Maybe you're right. Maybe I can't be the admiral you've been waiting for, but I can be the admiral you've got. That's all we ask, sir. Arya's voice cut through the moment. Admiral, I'm detecting approaching ships on long-range sensors. It appears our training time is over. The Federation? Jake asked. Affirmative. Supreme Administrator Clippert's flagship, along with a full bureaucratic fleet. They've found us. Jake stood up from the captain's chair, surprised to find that he actually felt ready for this. Maybe not competent, but definitely ready. Well then, he said, I guess it's time to see if rock, paper, scissors can save the galaxy. The bureaucratic Federation fleet emerging from hyperspace looked exactly like what you'd expect from an organization that had turned conquest into a filing system. Their ships were gray, rectangular, and covered in what appeared to be cosmic antenna arrays designed specifically for broadcasting forms and regulations. At the center of the fleet was a vessel so aggressively bureaucratic that it looked like someone had built a spaceship out of office cubicles and red tape. That's the flagship, Rex said grimly, studying the tactical display. The endless paperwork. Heavily armed with regulation cannons and form dispensers, Jake stared at the approaching fleet through the view screen. They named their flagship the Endless Paperwork? That's either the most honest thing I've ever heard or the most terrifying. Both, Admiral Arya confirmed. They're hailing us. Put them through. The view screen shifted to show the bridge of the enemy flagship, and Jake got his first look at Supreme Administrator Clippert. If bureaucracy had evolved into a life form, this would be the result. Clippert appeared to be constructed entirely of filing cabinets, briefcases, and what looked like an infinite supply of clipboards. When he spoke, it sounded like a tax audit having a bad day. Attention, unregistered vessel. I am Supreme Administrator Clippert of the Bureaucratic Federation. You are in violation of approximately 47,000 interstellar regulations, including but not limited to operating a spacecraft without proper permits, disturbing the peace of a designated wilderness area, and existing without filing the appropriate existence forms. Hi there, Jake said cheerfully. Jake Morrison, temporary admiral and full-time disaster magnate. How's your day going? Clippert's response was to pull out what appeared to be the galaxy's largest clipboard. Your vessel and crew are hereby ordered to surrender immediately and report for processing. Failure to comply will result in additional paperwork charges and possible assignment to our detention center, where you will spend the next 1,000 years filling out Form 27B in triplicate. What's Form 27B? Jake asked. Application for permission to request information about filing an appeal for consideration of possible reduction of sentence duration, Clippert replied without missing a beat. Luna leaned over to Jake. That's their standard torture method. Nobody has ever successfully completed Form 27B. The instructions reference other forms that don't exist. Ingenious, Jake admitted. Evil but ingenious. Rex was studying the tactical situation with growing alarm. Admiral, they've got us surrounded. 47 ships, all armed with bureaucracy cannons. If they open fire, they'll bury us in regulatory paperwork. Admiral, Wrench called from his engineering station, I can give you full power to weapons, but our shields won't hold against that much concentrated bureaucracy. Jake looked at his crew, then back at the view screen where Clippert was shuffling through what appeared to be an endless supply of forms. An idea was forming in his mind, the kind of idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Given his track record, it could be both. Arya, open a channel to all Federation ships. Admiral, what are you doing? Rex asked nervously. Something that's either going to save the galaxy or get us all turned into filing clerks. Jake turned to face the view screen with the kind of confidence that came from having absolutely nothing left to lose. Supreme Administrator Clippert, I challenge you to the most human thing imaginable. Clippert's filing cabinet head tilted slightly. Explain. A bureaucratic nightmare, Jake said with a grin that would have made his ancestor proud. I'm going to flood your entire communication system with Earth's most confusing paperwork. Oh, impossible. No bureaucracy in the galaxy is more complex than ours. Want to bet? That's when Jake did something that would be remembered in galactic history as either the most brilliant tactical maneuver ever conceived or the most petty revenge ever executed. He opened every single communication channel on the ship and began broadcasting. Aria, upload everything. Tax codes, insurance claim forms, DMV applications, health insurance paperwork, college financial aid forms, and anything else from Earth's bureaucratic archives. With pleasure, Admiral. What followed was a flood of paperwork so confusing, so contradictory, and so mind-numbingly complex that it made the Federation's own regulations look like children's picture books. The alien bureaucrats, faced with tax forms that referenced deductions for deductions of deductions, insurance claims that required 7 different types of approval from offices that no longer existed, and DMV forms that asked for your mother's maiden name in languages that hadn't been spoken for centuries, began suffering system-wide crashes. Impossible. Clippert wailed, his filing cabinet structure beginning to shake. This paperwork makes no sense. How do you file a Form 1040 when Schedule C references Form 8829, which requires information from Form 4500 Pre 62, which doesn't apply unless you've also filed Form 3800? You don't, Jake said cheerfully. That's the beauty of it. It's designed to be impossible. While the Federation fleet struggled to process Earth's bureaucratic nightmare, Luna had another inspiration. Admiral, what about their communication systems? If we could overload those too. Aria, patch me into their hold music system. I like where this is going, Admiral. What Jake did next would go down in military history as either the most creative use of psychological warfare ever recorded or the cruelest thing one species had ever done to another. He began broadcasting Earth's most annoying hold music across all Federation frequencies. Smooth jazz versions of pop songs. Endless loops of Girl from Ipanema. Instrumental renditions of hits from the 1980s played on what sounded like electronic kazoos. The effect was immediate and devastating. Federation crew members began abandoning their posts, unable to endure another note of Kenny G's saxophone. Ship after ship began signaling surrender, their crews begging for mercy rather than endure another minute of elevator music. Supreme Administrator Clippert, faced with the dual assault of incomprehensible paperwork and torture by smooth jazz, finally cracked. We surrender. We surrender. Please make it stop. We'll do anything. Just turn off that horrible music. All Federation ships, this is Admiral Morrison, Jake announced. You are ordered to withdraw from this sector immediately and return to your home systems. Any attempt to continue your bureaucratic conquest of the galaxy will result in a full broadcast of Earth's customer service hold music, including the extended remix version of The Girl from Ipanema featuring extra saxophone solos. The Federation fleet turned and fled with a speed that suggested they were escaping something far worse than death. As the last enemy ship disappeared into hyperspace, Jake slumped back in his captain's chair, exhausted but victorious. Admiral, Rex said with something approaching awe, that was the most unconventional military victory I've ever witnessed. Human warfare is fascinating, Luna exclaimed, making notes on her datapad. You defeated a superior force using nothing but confusing forms and bad music. It wasn't bad music, Jake protested. It was strategically annoying music. Wrench looked up from his engineering console. Admiral, I'm reading massive celebrations across 17 star systems. Word is spreading that the Federation has been defeated. Aria's voice carried a note of what might have been pride. Congratulations, Admiral. You have successfully completed your ancestors' mission and saved the galaxy from eternal bureaucratic oppression. Jake looked around at his crew, realizing that somewhere between the training disasters and the improvised victory, these aliens had stopped being strangers and started being his friends. So what happens now? He asked. Now, Admiral, Rex said formally, the galaxy is free, and you have officially earned your place in military history. Does this mean I can go home? The three aliens exchanged glances, and Jake could see the answer in their expressions. "Of course, Admiral," Luna said quietly. "If that's what you want." For the first time since falling through that hole in the desert, Jake had a choice. He could return to his old life of failed treasure hunting and ramen noodles or... "You know what?" Jake said finally. "I think I'm starting to like this Admiral thing." With the bureaucratic Federation in full retreat and the galaxy celebrating its freedom from eternal paperwork, Jake Morrison officially held the title of Admiral, though he still wasn't entirely sure what that meant in practical terms. The crew offered to take him on a grand tour of the galaxy, showing him worlds where the drinks flowed like water, and the inhabitants were reportedly impressed by treasure hunters with questionable life choices and an inexplicable talent for saving civilizations. "Admiral," Rex said formally, "it would be our honor to escort you to the celebration on Rigel 7. They're throwing a parade in your honor, complete with military honors and a key to the city. They want to study your tactical methods at the War College on Centauri Prime," Luna added excitedly. "Your bureaucratic warfare techniques are already being analyzed by military strategists across 17 systems. And every engineer in the galaxy wants to know how you fixed that coffee maker," Wrench chimed in. "They're calling it the Morrison method and teaching it in technical schools." Jake considered the offers, imagining himself as a celebrated hero touring the galaxy, collecting honors and probably getting into all sorts of adventures with his alien crew. It was tempting, really tempting. But something about it didn't feel right. "You know what, guys? I appreciate the offer, I really do. But I think I want to go home." The disappointment on their faces was immediate and obvious, though they tried to hide it behind professional acceptance. "Of course, Admiral," Rex said, though his military bearing couldn't quite conceal his sadness. "It has been an honor serving with you." "Wait," Jake said, holding up a hand. "I didn't say I wanted to go home alone." The three aliens looked at him with confusion. "Aria," Jake called out, "how would you feel about a change of scenery? Earth's got plenty of bureaucracy for you to make fun of, and I bet you'd find human technology hilariously primitive." "Admiral, are you asking me to accompany you?" "I'm asking if you want to be my partner in the treasure hunting business. Think about it, alien technology, human intuition, and absolutely no idea what we're doing. We could revolutionize the field of professional failure." There was a pause that Jake was learning to recognize as Aria processing something that didn't compute with her original programming. "Admiral, I was designed to serve as a military AI aboard a starship, not to assist in what you euphemistically call treasure hunting." "So that's a no?" Another pause. "I didn't say that. Earth does have remarkably inefficient bureaucratic systems that might benefit from my observations. And someone needs to document your continued survival against all statistical probability." "Is that a yes?" "That is a yes, Admiral. I believe the term is why not." Jake turned to the others. "Rex, Luna, Wrench, what do you say? Want to see how the other half lives? Earth's got plenty of mysteries buried in the ground, and after 500 years of sleeping, you might enjoy a little active exploration." Rex straightened to attention. "Admiral, it would be our honor to continue serving under your command, regardless of the mission parameters. I would love to study human culture from ground level." Luna practically bounced with excitement. "The anthropological opportunities are endless." Wrench grinned, showing teeth that were definitely not standard human equipment. "Admiral, after 5 centuries of maintaining the same ship systems, I'm ready for some new mechanical challenges. Plus, Earth machines sound delightfully primitive." "Then it's settled," Jake said. "We're going home." 3 hours later, Jake found himself back in the Nevada desert, standing next to his broken-down Jeep with his 3 alien companions and Aria downloaded into a device that looked suspiciously like the world's most advanced metal detector. The buried spaceship had sealed itself and returned to its underground hiding place, waiting for the next time the galaxy needed saving. So Rex said, looking around at the endless expanse of sand and rock, "This is Earth." "This is a very small part of Earth," Jake corrected. "Wait until you see what humans consider entertainment. I can't wait to study human social structures," Luna exclaimed, pulling out her scanning device and immediately beginning to take readings of everything in sight. Wrench was already examining Jake's broken Jeep with professional interest. "Admiral, this vehicle appears to be held together with rust and hope. It's perfect." "Welcome to human engineering," Jake said proudly. Aria's voice came from the device in Jake's hand. "Admiral, I'm detecting several interesting metallic anomalies in the immediate area. It appears this desert is hiding more than just our ship." Jake grinned and fired up his metal detector, which began beeping with an enthusiasm that suggested it too was excited about the upgrade. "Well then, crew, looks like we're back in business." "What kind of business?" Rex asked. Jake started walking across the sand, following the increasingly excited beeping of his upgraded metal detector, with his alien crew trailing behind him like the galaxy's most overqualified archaeological team. "The treasure-hunting business, Rex. But now we've got alien technology that actually works, a crew that can handle anything the universe throws at us and absolutely no idea what we're going to find next." He paused as the metal detector started going crazy over a spot about 50 yards from where he'd originally found the ship. "My new motto, why dig for quarters when you can dig for quasars?" "Admiral," Luna said, scanning the area with scientific enthusiasm, "I'm reading some fascinating energy signatures beneath the surface. This could be another buried vessel, or possibly ancient alien artifacts, or maybe even an interdimensional gateway. Or," Wrench added practically, "it could be a septic tank." "Only one way to find out," Jake said, pulling out his shovel. As he started digging, Aria provided running commentary with her trademark sarcasm. "Excellent, Admiral. From saving the galaxy to digging holes in the desert. This is either character development or a severe case of cosmic regression. Hey, I saved the galaxy once. Lightning might strike twice." "Admiral, your luck isn't luck," Aria observed. "It's cosmic irony, and frankly the universe has terrible taste in heroes." Rex watched Jake dig with the fascination of someone who'd spent 500 years following military protocol and was now discovering the joy of completely improvised adventure. "Admiral, what exactly are we hoping to find?" "I have no idea, Rex. That's what makes it fun." Luna was taking readings of everything within a 50-foot radius, her excitement level climbing with each new discovery. "The geological composition of this area is remarkable. There are traces of at least 17 different alien alloys in the soil, suggesting this location has been visited by multiple interstellar civilizations." "Multiple civilizations?" Jake paused in his digging. "You mean there might be more ships down here?" "Ships, artifacts, technology, possibly even other stasis pods with crews waiting to be awakened." Luna's eyes were practically glowing with scientific enthusiasm. "Jake, I think you've accidentally discovered the galaxy's most popular interdimensional parking lot." Wrench was examining the broken Jeep with the kind of professional interest usually reserved for fine art. "Admiral, with a few modifications I could get this vehicle running at about 300% efficiency. Maybe add some weapons systems, interdimensional capabilities, and a decent cup holder." "Can you fix the air conditioning?" "Admiral, I can make it so cold in there you'll think you're vacationing on Pluto." "Sold." "And two." As Jake continued digging, his shovel hit something that definitely wasn't rock, sand, or septic tank. It was smooth, metallic, and humming with a familiar energy. Well, Jake said, grinning at his crew. "Looks like Admiral Morrison's retirement is going to be more interesting than expected." "Admiral," Rex said, his military training kicking in as he scanned the horizon, "should we be concerned about what else might be buried out here?" "Rex, my friend," Jake said, wiping sweat from his forehead and looking out over the desert that apparently hid more alien technology than Area 51. I learned something important over the past few days. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, and it seems to think I'm the punchline to some cosmic joke. And how do you feel about that? Luna asked with scientific curiosity. Jake looked at his crew, a blue military perfectionist who was learning to embrace chaos, a purple scientist who found everything fascinating, a green engineer who could apparently make anything work better, and an AI who expressed affection through creative insults. 6 months ago, his biggest adventure had been getting lost in a shopping mall. Now he was a galactic hero with his own crew and apparently unlimited access to buried alien technology. "You know what?" Jake said, shouldering his shovel and heading back toward the latest discovery. "I think I'm okay with being the universe's favorite cosmic punchline. At least it's never boring." "Admiral," Arya's voice cut through his philosophical moment, "I'm detecting movement beneath the surface. Whatever you found, it's waking up." Jake grinned at his crew, feeling that familiar mix of excitement and impending disaster that had somehow become his signature. "Well then, crew, looks like our next adventure is about to begin. Any predictions about what we might find this time?" Rex asked. "With my luck. Probably another galaxy that needs saving." And as if on cue, the sand beneath their feet began to glow with an otherworldly light, and Jake Morrison, professional failure turned galactic hero, prepared to discover what other cosmic responsibilities the universe had decided to dump on his completely unqualified shoulders. "Arya?" "Yes, Admiral." "Next time I say how hard could it be, remind me that the universe considers that a challenge." "Noted, Admiral. Should I also remind you that you've never backed down from a challenge, no matter how astronomically stupid it might be?" "Yeah," Jake said, watching as something massive began to emerge from the desert floor. And that too. The desert stretched endlessly around them, hiding who knew how many more buried secrets, and Jake Morrison realized that his treasure hunting days were just getting started. The only difference now was that instead of looking for lost change and bottle caps, he was apparently destined to keep stumbling across the galaxy's most important buried secrets. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but as he watched his alien crew prepare for whatever was about to emerge from the sand, Jake had to admit it was definitely more interesting than his previous career of professional disappointment. "All right, crew," he called out, raising his voice over the increasing hum of alien technology awakening beneath their feet. "Whatever's down there, we handle it the same way we handled the Federation. With style, creativity, and absolutely no idea what we're doing. That's the Morrison method." Wrench called out cheerfully. "I wouldn't have it any other way," Jake replied, and meant it. After all, the universe had already proven it had terrible taste in heroes. The least Jake could do was give it the most entertainingly incompetent hero possible.